All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Energy Rebound Program informational webinar presented by the Wyoming Business Council. I'm Warren Appel, Agency Services Manager for the WBC, and I'm going to be your facilitator today. I'm going to cover a few quick housekeeping reminders before I hand you over to Sarah. Attendees are invited to submit written questions using the Q&A function on the webinar toolbar. We will respond to as many of these questions as time allows, and if we can't get to your question, we'll reach out directly with an answer. Your questions are important as we use them to build out FAQs and future webinars, so please get those into us. Please do not submit questions or comments using the chat box as we can't track those as easily. If you'd like to ask a live question when we get to the Q&A portion, you may use the Raise My Hand feature on the webinar toolbar, and we'll call on you in turn. I will remind all of our panelists to keep your microphone muted at all times when you're not speaking and keep background noise to a minimum. If you need to step away or are distracted, we know this happens to everyone. We ask that you turn off your webcam. These are not only the nice neighborly things to do, but will ensure we've got a good recording. And yes, this webinar is being recorded. We will make recordings of it available at wyomingbusiness.org and on our partner websites in the coming days. So with those items checked off our list, I'm going to hand you off to Wyoming Business Council Chief Strategy Officer, Sarah Fitzgerald, to introduce our panelists and agenda this morning. Sarah? Got you on mute, Sarah.
Apologies for that. I think I'm off now. Okay. All right. Let's try this again. So, yeah, thank you, Warren. As Warren said, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at the Wyoming Business Council, and thank you to all of you for attending today. Today we'll be going through some information about the Wyoming Energy Rebound Program that Governor Gordon just announced, and which will launch tomorrow at 10 a.m. We've got a few people on the call today who are going to be able to help walk through a lot of that information. Those include Randall Luthi, who is the Chief Energy Advisor for Governor Gordon. We've also got folks from the Wyoming Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, Mark Watson and Tom Crowpatch. We've also got our AG, Deputy AG, Brandy Monger. And we should get you kind of squared away on that. We'll spend about 20 minutes going through some information, and then the bulk of the time today will be reserved for you to ask questions to all of us so that you can be prepared to submit your application starting tomorrow. With that, I'm going to hand it right over to Randall Luthi to give kind of just an overview of the program, talk through some eligibility requirements and award amounts and things like that. Randall?
Thank you. I think I'm off of mute. Am I?
Yep, you're good.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. And good morning to all who have signed in this morning. I really appreciate your efforts to do so. Governor Gordon's Energy Rebound Program offers some real economic shot in the arm for those operators who will be able to take advantage of this CARES money. Now, the CARES money is a great opportunity, but it's also a hurdle because of the restrictions that have been attached to the use of those funds by Congress. The Energy Rebound Program is tailored to meet those requirements, and it follows the patterns of Wyoming business relief programs, and it also takes some ideas which were initiated by the North Dakota legislature on a similar program. I tell you, the governor put this together over the last, about 2.5, 3 weeks, but it came with the help of Wyoming's oil and gas industry, the Wyoming Business Council, Wyoming AG, and the Wyoming Oil and Gas Conservation Committee, many of whom you'll probably hear from later today. But I'd like to personally thank those individuals and organizations that actually spent most of last weekend making sure that the rules were finalized and that we had a process to follow. So simply put, under the current CARES legislation and guidelines, we can use the CARES Act to pay for goods and/or services used to commence or complete for the completion of drilled but uncompleted wells, recompletions or workovers, and plugging and abandonment activities. Now that trigger is that these projects were planned but were unable to be commenced or finished due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing health orders. The other limiting factor is that the funds have to be expended by December 30th. So companies, as you complete your plans and contemplate the application, keep in mind that you may not be able to complete the projects. You don't have to complete the projects, but you can certainly get a good start on many of them. I don't think anyone understands the effect of COVID-19 more than the Wyoming oil and gas industry. Simply put, all activity basically stopped. We even had a period of time when we didn't have a drill working in Wyoming. The governor's Energy Rebound program is specifically designed to assist that Wyoming economy. And as you go through the process, and as will be explained later, that window for applications is short. The companies that were ready to roll in March would hopefully have the information in hand and ready to complete the application. Applications will be accepted tomorrow at 10 a.m. and have to be in by Monday at 10 a.m. Payment will be based upon invoices, and those invoices will be due by January 30th of 2021. And I do understand that the process is limiting and faster than usual, but frankly, the Wyoming oil and gas industry has always proven to be nimble and quick to adjust. This is truly an opportunity to inject some capital into your business. So with that, I'll kick it back to Sarah. And once again, and I wish you best wishes on that the projects you submit are funded.
All right, thank you, Randall. I'll go through in a little bit more detail exactly the eligibility requirements for both your company and for the projects for which you are applying. So for your company, these are the things that make you eligible for this program. You have to have been established on or before any applicable COVID-19 health orders. Generally, we use March 13th as that date. So that's really the cutoff. You just can't be a new company that was created since March 13th. And you also have to have at least one full-time employee. And the federal definition we use for that is working more than 30 hours per week. And that's also as of March 13th, 2020. In addition, and Randall kind of covered this already, you have to meet one of these two requirements. You either, as a result of COVID-19, have to have been unable to complete a drilled well that you own and operate, perform a recompletion or a workover of a well that you own and operate, or P&A a well that you own and operate. Or because we know that some wells are not owned or operated by the folks who have the legal obligation to P&A them, you can also have a legal obligation to P&A, but you didn't do that because of COVID-19 this year. So those are the requirements for your business. We also have requirements for eligibility for the projects for which you are applying. So to be eligible for this program, a project must fit into one of these three categories. It has to either be a completion of a drilled well in Wyoming, of course, that wasn't performed because of COVID-19, or it can be a recompletion or workover of a well in Wyoming that wasn't performed because of that, or it can be a P&A of an idle well, and that includes surface reclamation in Wyoming that wasn't performed because of COVID-19 and the health emergency and economic emergency associated with that. Here's how the award amounts work. As you apply for funding for each one of your projects that you have, for each project, and those projects are again projects that fit into one of these categories. Generally, one project equals one well. So for each project you're completing on a well, the award will be the least of these three things: the estimated total cost of the proposed project, the estimated total amount that you will be able to expend toward the completion of that project by December 30th, or $500,000. So, and Randall kind of talked about this. One of the big limitations that we are limited by the CARES Act by is that all of the work done toward the projects for which we are funding must be done before December 30. And that's a CARES federal requirement. And so that's kind of that's the amount for which we can fund via this program, up to that cap of $500,000 per project. And again, projects are generally wells. So it's not $500,000 per company, it's $500,000 per project. The application is up right now on wyomingbusiness.org/ERP. These are the kinds of things that are asked for in that application. Basic contact information and business information to confirm that you do meet those eligibility requirements we spoke about. And then we'll ask for a number of things about the well and the project that you're working on, including just some basic information like API number, operator, the well status, and then we'll ask for the project type, and that project type is one of those three: completion, a recompletion or workover, or a P&A. When are you going to start the project? When will the project be completed? The total estimated cost of the project, as well as what you'll be able to expend before December 30th. Also, we're going to ask for the number of workers that are needed to perform the project, and those can be contract workers or actual full-time employee workers. We'll also ask for the estimated additional production of oil and gas that's expected to result from the project over the first year. We'll also ask you, when you fill out your application, you'll also be agreeing to a couple of different things. So certifications are that most of the certifications cover that you are agreeing that all of the information that you provide to us is true to the best extent of your knowledge. And there's a number of other certifications in there that are really important. One thing that is an important consideration as you're thinking about applying is that because we're working with federal money and because we're working, this with the government, we need to. The information that you provide to us is subject to the federal or the Freedom of Information Act. And so we may be in the position where we need to disclose everything that you provide to us. Additionally, the award amount and your company name, if you are indeed awarded, will be disclosed to the public via the state auditor's website. And so there are some kind of considerations that you might not necessarily think about there. So read those certifications very carefully before you sign. Additionally, by filling out the contract, you're also agreeing to award terms and conditions. So this is if you are awarded an energy rebound stipend, you will agree to all of these terms and conditions. This doesn't guarantee, by signing this, that this in no way guarantees that you'll receive an award, but by signing to this at this end, that means that we get to skip a step later on. We don't need to do a whole other contract or anything like that. So once you sign this, once you receive notification that you have received your award, you can go ahead and begin working, and you're essentially under contract. With that, I'm gonna open up the application and walk through it and show you kind of what it looks like, and show you a few things that are that might be useful to you. All right, so the application is just a fillable PDF. It should be pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory to go through and fill out all of the kind of basic information. We're asking for eligibility information about the company here in the first part. Pretty self-explanatory. And when it comes to project information, we've got a nice little fillable Excel sheet here, basically a table here. If it's easier for you, you can also attach an Excel spreadsheet to your application when you submit it via the email address that we've given to you. So you don't need to go through and enter every single item here. If you've already got a spreadsheet that does that for you, you can just attach that to the email when you submit your application. There are a number of federal reporting requirements that we have to comply with for to use Federal CARES Act funds. This section, don't get scared by this section. We do need to report this. It's for us to comply with federal reporting guidelines, but this won't impact your priority, eligibility, or grant amounts. You can also, there's a kind of a fiddly question in here that asks, do you believe you're eligible for other funding? And you can also just check this I don't know box if you aren't sure. These certifications, I talked about that a little bit. Just make sure that you do agree to these certifications. There are some kind of disclosures and some things that we definitely need you to agree to before applying. Also, all of the terms that you would normally kind of see in a contract are included in this application. So when you sign the signature block all the way at the bottom of the application, you're agreeing to all of these terms, basically as if you were entering into a contract with the state of Wyoming. So do take that seriously. Read that carefully, have your attorneys take a look at it and make sure that you know what you're agreeing to there. All right. As Randall mentioned, the application will open tomorrow at 10 a.m. and will close at 10 a.m. on Monday, November 23rd. It's definitely a very short time frame, but we wanted to keep this short. We've been working as hard as we can to get this up and running as fast as possible, and we know that you guys are kind of ready with these projects too, and we want to get you working on these before that deadline of December 30th. So we wanted to keep that window pretty short for you to do that. What you'll need to do to apply is just go to the wyomingbusiness.org/ERP webpage, download that fillable PDF that I just walked through, and then email it, download it and sign it, complete it, email it to wbc.erp@wyo.gov. With that, I will turn it over to Tom Kropatch. He's going to walk through the application review process. Throughout this process and throughout all of the programs that we have helped implement relative to CARES and COVID-19, we're really striving to balance security and speed.
Thank you, Sarah. Can you hear me? I should be unmuted, I think.
Yep, you're good.
Great, thanks. So on this slide, you see an illustration that will be of the process that will be utilized to review the applications. That process begins, as Sarah just mentioned, when the operator submits the application via email to the Business Council. The application will be reviewed by a team of state agencies, including the Wyoming Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. And that'll be to help determine complete the eligibility checks, the project data verification, and the prioritization. But it is important to note that the final funding decision is made by the Wyoming Business Council, and approval or denial of the Wyoming Business Council, or approval or denial determination of the Wyoming Business Council is final. As mentioned several times throughout the application or throughout the presentation here, to comply with the Federal CARES Act guidance, all of the work that you wish to be reimbursed for must be completed on or before December 30th, 2020, but only the work that you wish to be reimbursed for needs to be completed by that date, not the entire project. So an example of that might include but wouldn't be limited to purchasing and hauling of water or other materials for a hydraulic fracturing job or other type of well stimulation. It might be the engineering, design, and planning and preparation work. And if you do that, please track your hours. Or it might include time and materials charged by a contractor or service provider. As noted, invoices for the work conducted prior to December 30th, 2020 will be accepted until January 30th, 2021. And then invoices for the eligible work would be paid through March 30th, 2021. And as Sarah previously mentioned, by signing the application, you agree to the terms listed in the application. No additional contract is required. And kind of finally there on this slide, as part of the terms of the application, the Wyoming Business Council may conduct and contract for audits of the eligible businesses receiving awards in this program to ensure that the awarded funds are expended in compliance with state and federal law. So by accepting an award in the program, you agree to assist and provide information requested by the auditors during any such audit. And I think, Sarah, turn it back to you for the next slide there.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Tom. As Tom mentioned, part of that review process will be establishing prioritization and prioritizing the projects that we see. And this comes into play if we are in the scenario where there is more demand than we have funding. Then if there's more demand than that $15 million of CARES Act funding than we have. The main criteria for prioritization here is on economic and employment benefit to Wyoming. Priority will be given to those projects that provide the greatest economic and employment benefit to Wyoming. Other factors, though, do include the estimated date of start and completion of the project, completeness of the application, estimated amount of increased production, as well as your ability to P&A in a timely manner. Now, if two projects are exactly the same across the board with all of those other prioritization criteria, the reviewing team will use the date of application as a tiebreaker. And so it's kind of in those very rare circumstances that if you got your application in first, you might be awarded before the next project. And again, that's going to be a rare circumstance and also in a circumstance that that we don't know if that will happen if demand will in fact outstrip the funds that we have available. With that, we wanted to leave plenty of time for questions and answers. And so I will just go ahead and turn it over to Warren. He'll be able to MC this session very well. He's a pro at it by now with all of the webinars, if any of you have been on our previous webinars this year. And so he'll go ahead and run that. And we've got that a whole panel of folks to help answer your questions today.
Yeah, so panelists, please take the opportunity to review the questions in the Q&A box. And if you want to mark any of those for live answer or shoot a text message answer back, you can certainly do that. Attendees wishing to submit those questions can do that with the Q&A tool on the webinar toolbar, or you can use the raise your hand feature and we can call on you live and try to get to as many questions as you would like to. So send those questions in. We're going to start first up here, Sarah, with a question from Tom. He says, do the projects have to be unstarted at the time of the fund, or can a project that was started but uncompleted prior to this fund be considered? And if so, to what funding level?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Tom. The start date does not have to be, before the fund opens or before the fund was created. The key there, though, is that the project had to have not been done, or the work had not been done because of the effects of COVID-19. So it doesn't matter what day it started, it matters the reason why it either wasn't started or wasn't completed.
Okay, we've got another question from Tom. Is there a requirement similar to the endurance or agriculture funds for applicants to be Wyoming headquartered or more than 50% of primary work in Wyoming and at least 60% of employees or payroll paid in Wyoming? Please explain.
No, the answer is no. This is different from our endurance and agriculture funds and the interruption and relief and mitigation funds that we've administered to date. Because we know that many of these projects are operated by out-of-state operators, but they do provide jobs and an economic benefit in Wyoming. And so that is not a requirement that is included in this program, even though it was included and is included in the endurance and agriculture funds.
Okay, a question from Jay. Do projects to temporarily abandon wells qualify for funding?
I might lean on Brandy to help me answer this one. Yeah, Brandy, do you have a thought on that? Does that fit into that middle kind of category?
This is Brandy Monger with the Attorney General's office. I'm not exactly sure if it would or not. That might actually be a better question for the industry folks. But I do think that it would implicate the economic impact of that project.
Yes, very good. And Jay, we can talk offline about that as well. So I will reach out to you and chat about that.
All right, the next question from Deborah. Project started but not completed by December 30th will not be funded. We have heard two different comments.
Great question, Deborah. So this does tend to be a little bit confusing. So the key thing to know here is that we cannot reimburse for any activities, materials, anything that is received after December 30. What that doesn't mean is that your whole project has to be done before December 30. So if you're working on completing a well, you might be doing some work, you might be doing some things before the end of the year, before December 30. You might be purchasing materials, you might be hauling water, you might be doing those kinds of things. You might even be doing some in-house engineering and design work. You can reimburse for all of those activities that are done before December 30th, even if the project is not completed by then.
All right, next question comes from Kristen. On the application, it requests specific information by well. Can more than one project be submitted on a single application? For example, if a company has 6 wells to complete at a cost of $150,000 per well, can this be a single application that covers 6 separate projects at a $150,000 grant request per project for a total of $900,000?
Yes, Kristen, that's exactly how you should fill out your application. And remember there that it's $500,000 maximum per project. So if you have those 6 wells on that table, or if you attach a separate spreadsheet, then you're eligible for up to $500,000 per well per project, not $500,000 per application.
Okay, next question is from Jamie. Can a non-operator of a well submit an application for their proportionate costs paid to the operator for a duck well?
Generally, the answer to this question, Jamie, is no. So this program is for operators, and we know that operators will be hiring service companies and using services from within Wyoming. And so that this program is really intended to make sure that the work keeps getting done and intended to benefit the entire supply chain in that way. But this program is for operators.
Okay. Next.
This is Randall. Sarah, before we go on, maybe we get a little more clarification from that. I know we talked about, operators, are, as you mentioned, are going to hire subcontractors. And I think the question is, can the subcontractor just go directly and attempt to get this funds? But I think the safest way to do it is through the operator. Either the operator will do their own invoice or grab the invoice and submit it. I believe that's correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, we have a question here from Deborah. Who determines from the audit team which expenses are eligible?
Excellent question, Deborah. So the invoices will go through the Wyoming Business Council, but as you can tell from the crew on the call today, this is definitely a team effort across all agencies, and so we are definitely leaning on the Oil and Gas Commission to help us with the technical aspects of that invoicing.
Okay. Jamin asks, on question number 19 on the application appears to be limited to a single line. I'm not sure we can fully answer that question, the amount of space. What do you recommend?
Hold on, I'm going back to the application. I don't know which question is number 19. Do you want to move on to a different question, Warren, while I'm looking that up?
Sure. So how quickly, this question comes from Jen, how quickly can projects be approved so we can move forward?
That's an excellent question, Jen, and I will answer that one first, and then I'll get back to the application question. We are going to do our best to get these done in a short period of time. Our goal is a few days. So we're really hoping to get that done in a few days. All of the notifications, we won't be approving on a rolling basis. And so after the close date on Monday, the 23rd, we will be working as hard as we can to get all of those things, all of those applications reviewed and approved or denied, and you should hopefully know within a few days after the 23rd. Going back to that number 19 on the application, do your best to answer it in that line. If you feel you can't, please feel free to add an attachment to your email when you submit your application. Something to remember here is that these questions in this block under federal reporting questions do not have any implication when it comes to your funding amount, priority, eligibility, anything like that.
Okay, a question from Kathy. As to the number of employees, is that number of employees in Wyoming or company-wide?
That is number of employees company-wide.
Okay. On the email that the application is submitted through, can applicants include any additional company information or a cover letter?
You may, but I will just caveat that with we will be making our decisions based on the information included and asked for in the application. And it would be a very, very rare circumstance that we would consider other information unless it's really pertinent and helps us answer the questions of, are you eligible, or how does this fit in within the priority criteria?
Okay. Sarah, you've spoken to this one before, but it's popping up a few times. Do you have to submit a separate application for each project? If so, can you submit multiple applications?
You do not have to submit a separate application for each project. You can submit one application for your company or for your business, but you can include as many projects as you would like in that single application. And that's what that table is for on page 3 of the application. I think there are like 20 spaces there, but if you have more than that, please do attach an Excel spreadsheet or something similar to give us all of that information for all of the projects that you're applying for.
Okay. A question from Ashley. Are electronic signatures acceptable? I'm guessing she means on the application, or do they need to be physical signatures?
Electronic signatures are acceptable, and I will lean on Brandy to answer this one.
Yeah, so we can take an electronic signature as long as we have something to confirm that that signature is correct. So like the email back with the application, just something that we can ensure that that is a true and correct signature.
So simply, if you fill out the application, you submit your digital signature on the application and you email it to us, those two things put together is enough to make it binding. Is that correct, Brandy?
Yes, we think so for this program.
Okay.
Okay. This question comes from Ken. Does it have to be a Wyoming state well, or can it be BLM?
So the requirements for this program say that it needs to be a well in Wyoming. It doesn't matter what the type of land it's on or anything like that. It just has to be within Wyoming borders.
Okay. Question comes from Chase. How soon can the companies commence the work applied for? Do companies have to wait until the application window closes until the award decision? And what date should companies be using for commencement?
Excellent question. So even if we had a question earlier about projects that have been started, we can't reimburse for any work that has been done before we approve your application. So the moment that you get a notification that says your application has been reviewed, that's the date at which we can start reimbursing you for. So any goods you've received after that, any materials you've received after that date, we can reimburse you for starting then and up until December 30th. What date should companies be using for commencement? Use that. You can use whatever date it makes sense in your use whatever date that you are that when work is actually commencing, the work for which you would like to be reimbursed for. So if you're able to start that on the day that you receive your application, you can go ahead and stick a date in there of the date when you apply or something like that. And if you're not, use a date in December or later.
Okay. This question from Aaron seems to be about subcontractors. Will the companies receiving these loans be required to use other Wyoming companies to haul the water for the fracs or to provide the engineering or on any of the items that they are eligible to spend the money on, or can they sub out that money anywhere?
That's a great question, Aaron. And there aren't any requirements, and I might lean on Randall as well to talk about this. There aren't any requirements in this program for companies to use Wyoming subcontractors, but we certainly hope, and we also know that will happen, and that's really part of the impetus for this program. Randall, do you want to add anything there?
I would, and as you see in the application process, those awards are going to be granted on those companies that can grant the most immediate and greatest economic benefit to Wyoming. And so certainly if you have a company as goes through the process that's only going to bring in out-of-state workers, and one that has a portion or all saying that, you know, we're going to be using Wyoming people, I think the application process itself is going to determine that one of those has a greater immediate economic benefit to Wyoming.
Okay. Let me see here. If a company applies for several projects and one of the projects is not selected, can the other projects be approved, or would the entire application be rejected?
Yeah, excellent question. We're going to be approving and denying on a project by project basis, not an application by application basis. So yes, if you apply for, let's say, 3 projects, and 2 of them, then 2 of them can get approved, 1 of them can get denied. It's a project by project decision.
All right. There's a question here from Ken. Is there a project limit for each operator?
There is not. There is only that $500,000 per project limit.
This question from Ben. We delayed drilling and hopefully completing a well that was scheduled to be drilled in June 2020. The well is now drilling and should be ready to start completing by December 1st, provided a positive well test. Can any part of the drilling and/or completion be eligible?
You know, I'm going to lean on Brandy for that one. That one might be a little bit of a unique circumstance.
And this may be one that we need to look at and take offline as to whether or not we might need some more information to actually decide whether it would apply, would comply or not.
Okay. Does the council, this one from Ken, does the council have an anticipated awards date with the Thanksgiving holiday being the end of next week?
Yes, sorry. Sorry, I was looking at a different question from Nick who chatted in there. Warren, would you mind reading that again? I apologize.
So does the council have an anticipated awards date with the Thanksgiving holiday being the end of next week?
Yeah, great question. The answer I'm going to give you right now is we're going to work as hard as we can to get those done before Thanksgiving, but we just don't know what the volume is going to look like at this point in time. So we would certainly like to.
Okay. Can work already completed prior to this fund and completed before December 30th for a project not completely finished due to COVID be reimbursed?
So the only parts of that work that can be reimbursed are the parts of that work that happen after you get notice from us that you have been approved, that project has been approved. We can't reimburse, unfortunately, for any expenses or work that was done before you get notice from us that you were approved.
Okay, we've got a few questions about this topic. Sarah, can you talk about the process to submit invoices for reimbursement and how the selected applicants would get paid?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And actually, we've got Amy Grunfeld, our Chief Operating Officer, on the call as well. And I'm going to lean on her to help me answer that invoicing question.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So invoices can be submitted to the Wyoming Business Council, and that information will be included in the FAQs on the website. Invoices can be submitted up until January 30th, but it's very, very, very important to remember that those invoices can only include work that was completed December 30th and prior. So while we are accepting invoices until January 30th, the invoices, again, December 30th is the work stop date that can be included on those invoices.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay, this question from Mark. What if you start the project but are unable to complete it? Would you be reimbursed for the part of the project completed by December 30th?
We can reimburse for anything that's done before December 30th, regardless of what happens after that date.
Okay. What documentation is required to show that the project was planned prior to March 13th?
We're going to ask you on the application, is this, we don't ask specifically about the planned or any of that thing, that type of thing. We just ask yes or no. Was the project planned as of March 13th, 2020? And we need you to be honest on your application, and do remember that you are certifying to that effect. And there are also some things that we can use to help validate that, permits, things like that. But we are asking you to be honest on these applications, and sign in the certification section that what you're saying in this application is true.
Okay, a question from Tom. How do we express the amount of employment that would be created by an improved project? For example, do we estimate the number of hours for each service company worker?
So we are asking for the estimated number of workers, and those can be either contract or employee, that are needed to perform the project. So we're talking about people here. How many people are you going to put to work? That's what we're asking for in the application.
All right, our next question from Jordan. Is pulling a well with a workover, not recompletion, eligible for funding? Also, I had missed the response about honoring the stipend if work is started in December but not completed in December due to weather.
Yes. So your first question there, I'll answer your second question first. So yes, we can reimburse. We there's no way for us to predict what happens after December 30, and so we will be able to reimburse for work done, the work that is done before then. Do keep in mind there that in the prioritization criteria, your ability to complete the work is a piece of that, and so do keep that in mind as well. And Warren, can you tell me what the first question was in that again?
Sure, you were saying, is pulling a well with a workover, not a recompletion, eligible for funding?
It is eligible for funding. So you can, that kind of middle bucket there can include a recompletion or a workover.
Okay, and here's a question in here. I'm going to paraphrase this one a little bit, but if the actual spend before December 30th is less than the estimated spend due to operational delays, are there any penalties?
No, there are not any penalties. We will reimburse you for exactly what you spend, because you'll be invoicing for those expenses.
Okay, and I think this next question dovetails nicely there. Are the invoices paid directly to the vendors, or does the operator pay and then get reimbursed?
And I might lean on Amy for this too. What the payments will go to the applicant with whom whoever applies, whoever puts their name on this application and signs this application, that is the entity that we can reimburse and that we can pay invoices for.
Yes, that's true, Sarah. So the applicant will be the one who will be reimbursed upon us receiving invoices. We will be asking for supporting documentation in those invoices, though. So we would want to see everything that was paid for to achieve the amount that's being asked to be reimbursed.
Okay. And I think, Amy, this one will fall kind of nicely in your Bandcamp. Can you talk about the timeline for reimbursing a project once those invoices get submitted?
Yes. So again, we're asking for invoices to be submitted no later than January 30th. They can be submitted to us earlier, of course. We do have up to 45 days to process those payments, but we will be processing those as quickly as possible.
Okay. This question from Jennifer. We have become liable for the P&A of a well by the BLM due to a defunct operator in which we hold records title. The BLM has directed us to P&A, but the operator of the well, per WOGCC records, is someone else. Can we list this as a project?
You sure can, and that goes back to those eligibility requirements. You can either have not been able to recomplete or do a completion or a workover because of COVID-19, or you can have a legal obligation to P&IOL that you weren't able to do, and you weren't able to do that because of COVID-19. So yes, you can apply for that type of project.
Okay. If a piece of equipment is ordered and invoiced before December 30th, but is not delivered until after December 30th, is the invoice eligible?
I'm going to ask Amy and Brandy on that one.
Yeah, Brandy, I'd like you to weigh in on that one as well.
And so Warren, can you repeat the question?
Certainly. If a piece of equipment is ordered and invoiced before December 30th, but is not delivered until after December 30th, is the invoice eligible?
No, it wouldn't be eligible. So for equipment, and the CARES Act is actually pretty clear on this, you have to receive it by December 30th, or you have to have a contract for delivery by December 30th. And then if something delays that, it can still be covered, but you have to have an expectation it will be delivered by December 30th.
Okay. Did the project have to be planned prior to March 13th to be approved, or do projects not completed in 2020 due to COVID count as well? For example, if a well needed a workover summer 2020, but the work was not done due to COVID, is that project eligible?
I think based on the information that you've provided that would be eligible because it fits within the rules. It was a project. It was a recompletion or a workover that was planned but wasn't done because of COVID-19. And so I believe, without having more information, that would fit the eligibility requirements. Is that correct, Brandy?
I'd have to look at the rules, but it seems to me that one of the requirements is that the project was planned prior to March 13th. So that may not fit the requirements.
Okay, yes, that's correct. I'm sorry, I apologize. That's correct. Thanks.
Okay. Would reimbursement for reclamation be eligible, as the work would have to be completed in spring or fall of 2021 and not within the December timeframe?
Yeah, great question. So I think there's kind of two pieces of that question. Reclamation is included if it's as part of a plugging and reclamation, plugging and abandonment of a well. That is an allowable expense via this program. However, we cannot reimburse for anything that is done after December 30.
Okay. This question is really relevant from Barbara. Can you provide more detailed information on the COVID issues that caused the work not to be done?
Yeah, great question. So that's really, I think all of you kind of know that pretty well. If COVID-19 prevented you from doing any of these things, and when we talk about COVID-19, it doesn't have to mean like somebody got sick and so you couldn't do it. It can mean the economic impact of COVID-19 prevented you from being able to do this. And Randall might have something to weigh in there as well.
Thank you. And yeah, it's less specifically pretty broad. And again, we're relying upon the companies just to certify that that is the case. But the reality is for the oil and gas industry, where you get into Q2, things pretty much just flat out shut down. There wasn't capital available. There wasn't a market. You couldn't get capital from selling your product. The COVID-19 effect is pretty broad.
Okay. This question from Kristen. If an operator receives an award of $100,000 to cover two projects estimated at $50,000 each, but the actual project costs end up being $40,000 and $60,000, will the operator receive reimbursement for the full $100,000, or would the reimbursement only cover up to $50K per project?
You will be reimbursed for exactly what you invoice us for. So even if you're approved for, or for what you invoice us for and we approve. So if you're approved, if you get an email, next week or the week after saying you've been approved for up to $100,000 for this project, that doesn't mean that we're going to write you a check for $100,000. That means that when you invoice us for work that you're doing toward that project before December 30th, we will pay you up to $100,000. Do you have something to add there, Amy?
Yeah, just to reinforce that, yes, we will reimburse up to the approved amount. And just something else I want to clarify on this point, work should not start until you receive that approval from the Wyoming Business Council. So that reimbursement amount is from the date that your project was approved through December 30th. That's the only time period for items that can be reimbursed.
Right. So even if your project is started just before the approval date, we can't reimburse you for anything that happens before that approval date. So even if you're starting work on it, that's fine, but we can't reimburse you for anything before the approval date.
Yep. So as you're preparing your invoices to be reimbursed by the Wyoming Business Council, make sure that your supporting documentation to support that invoice, as well as any itemization that you might be including on that invoice, again, is only for work or for items from the date you were approved through December 30th.
All right. Now it looks like we've got time for one more question. Can standalone surface reclamation qualify under this program, or must the surface reclamation be associated with the plugging and abandonment of a well? For instance, reclamation of an unused well pad or pit.
I believe within the rules, and Brandy may have more clarity on this. I believe that would not be an eligible expense or an eligible project. It's the plugging and reclamation of a well that either you're legally obligated to do so for, or that you own and operate. Is that correct, Brandy?
Yeah, I think that's correct.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this morning. And please know that we are available for questions. The fastest way to get your question answered is by emailing that same email address where you will submit your application to, and that's wbc.erp@wyo.gov. There are a few people manning that email address, so you'll get a faster response there than you will anywhere else. So direct questions there. We'll also be updating our FAQ based on all of the great questions that you had today, and we'll be posting that, updating that on our website as well. Additionally, don't forget, not that any of you would, applications will be accepted starting at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Something to really keep in mind there is that because that date of application is used as a tiebreaker, we want to make sure this is fair for everyone. If you submit an application before 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, it will not be accepted. So if that happens, if you do submit something before 10 a.m., know that you'll have to submit it again after 10 a.m. We will only accept applications between 10 a.m. tomorrow on Wednesday the 18th and Monday 10 a.m. on Monday the 23rd. All right, thank you very much. Have a great day.